So good afternoon, everybody. We're really pleased that you could join us today for the fire debris contractor training. This training is also available in Spanish interpretation. If you're looking for the Spanish interpretation, if you'd please go to the globe at the bottom of the page, and that will direct you to that Spanish interpretation. Our training today is hosted by both the County of Sonoma and the City of Santa Rosa, along with CalRecycle. And we'll be walking you through the fire debris removal process. And this is for contractors that'll be doing the private debris removal programs. At the end of the presentation from CalRecycle, we will have questions and answers, and we'll provide you with information about the individual private cleanups for both the county and the city. And then also during the presentation, if you could hold your questions to the end, or also use the question and answer button at the bottom of the page and go ahead and type in your question and we'll do the answer. And so that everybody will be able to see those questions and answers being addressed throughout the process. To start this off, I just want to thank Leslie Choate for setting this up. She's our Environmental Health Program Manager. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to her, and she's going to introduce our CalRecycle presenter to you.
Good afternoon. I'm introducing Bruce Berger. He's a licensed professional civil engineer with 21 years of state service. He's the waste management engineer for CalRecycle. He was the operations chief at the Woolsey Fire Hill debris removal project in Southern California in 2018 and 19. He was also in charge of campfire operations in Chico in 2019. And he is operations chief of the campfire tree removal in Chico 2019-20. He's slated to be the debris group supervisor operations manager for the inland branch in Solano County. So thank you, Bruce, for joining us today, and you can take it away.
Good afternoon, everybody. Can we see my screen or?
Not yet, Bruce.
No, we can't.
If you want, you can share your screen with your PowerPoint. There you go. It's coming up.
All right. So thank you for the introduction. We're going to talk about the state's CalRecycle's wildfire debris removal project this afternoon. Welcome, everyone. So this presented here is a brief reminder of the debris and removal projects in which CalRecycle has been involved to date. The latest efforts in Butte County and Los Angeles and Ventura counties, Leslie talked about a little bit there. And they were our 21st and 22nd projects that were undertaken by CalRecycle. And the 7th and 8th projects where we were receiving federal assistance. These are projects we've done over the last 12 years. So we'd like to start out usually with the mission statement. Our mission statement, our goal, if you will, for the state debris removal program is to leave the structural debris footprint in a condition that is ready to rebuild on. We'll be discussing the specifics during this presentation about how we go about doing that within our program. But one of the things we like to say is we have a 3-year-old rule, and we like to have the lots or the footprints ready for your 3-year-old to be able to play on that after we're finished. So the debris removal process. First, we have a county-directed hazmat sweep that comes in. We call that phase 1. And that basically looks for acute hazards. Acute hazards are ones that are going to kill you quick, things that can blow up, things, poisons that'll kill you quickly. And then we come in, the state comes in for the state program for phase 2, which is the things that will kill you over a long period of time, the heavy metals, carcinogenic substances, et cetera. We'll talk more about that in later slides. So after phase 1, as we start phase 2, the first thing we usually do, we have a consultant, environmental consultant, that comes in and does a site assessment and documents each individual APN or site. They go in and look at various different things. They draw a map, and again, I'll go into greater detail on that in further slides here. We then create a work plan, and we develop a cleanup application, computer databases to record all the stuff the work that we'll be doing on these APNs. Then the first step is to go in for asbestos testing. Again, we'll go into greater detail on that in a later slide. We analyze and remove asbestos containing material, ACM. We try to get that out, and then afterwards we'll tip over the chimneys, if there are any, and analyze those for asbestos containing material, ACM. And if it does have asbestos containing material, we'll get rid of those. The next step is we pick up the metals and vehicles, put them in bins, take them away for recycling. Then we go to the ash, debris, concrete removal. After that's done, we scrape 3 to 6 inches of soil off the top to try and get any of the heavy metals and carcinogens that have from the hazardous materials and the burned debris off the site. Then we'll do soil sampling. Once the soil sampling comes back as being clean or clear or to our standards or to the county standards, we will spray on, well, we'll put erosion control on the site. So one important aspect of this, in equipment-wise, is having water trucks, water buffaloes for good dust control or for site assessments, for asbestos assessment and removal, and also for the debris removal. During the site assessment period, there will be people tromping around in the ash, and we want to make that nice and wet so it doesn't create a lot of fugitive dust to get out into the community, to get into the workers' lungs and stuff. And also same thing for the asbestos assessment and removal. And it's very important during the debris removal. We have heavy equipment in there that can possibly kick up a lot of dust. So as I talked about earlier, the site assessment, basically we do a rough map of the property. Our consultant does a rough map of the property. We are concerned with the property lines. We're concerned with an outline of the footprint of the burned debris and ash. We want to locate the septic tanks, the utilities, and we want to identify any other hazards that we might see on the site as they're doing the assessment, and especially the asbestos containing materials. We have specialists that look at that asbestos containing materials. So our work plan application process, we provide a site map, including, so we do some background soil sampling at first. on and off the ash footprint. We, as I've said many times, asbestos testing, analysis, removal, and disposal. The ash, debris, metal, concrete removal, soil removal. Then we do the confirmation soil sampling. These are all part of your work plan, part of your monitoring plan. So these are some of the forms of asbestos that we find in some of these sites. A lot of times your insulation, your transite siding, a lot of pipes have transite insulation, transite pipes. You'll have sometimes asbestos ceiling and wall and floor tiles. A lot of the mortar, sometimes the actual bricks that they use for the inside of the fireplace for a chimney will contain asbestos. All this material needs to be hauled to a lined class 3 landfill that is permitted to take asbestos. So chimneys are disposed of as ash and debris if they don't contain any asbestos material. So the mortars and flues are generally where we see most of the asbestos containing material. Next, we talk about removal of the vehicles, and we recycle that as metal. After we contact the insurance companies and the DMV, usually this is done by law enforcement officials to make sure that these vehicles are taken off the registration rolls for the state. It requires a law enforcement official's signature to make that happen. So other metals are then removed. Appliances, structural steel, electrical equipment, cabinets, trailers, sheds, siding, roofing, all recycled as scrap. I don't know why they left out the HVAC material is usually prominent. You can see some of it in the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning equipment. You can see some of it in one of the pictures there, one of the photographs. So we take the metal that's on the site first, pick it up, put it into bins, haul it off to be recycled. Next, we remove the ash and debris. This is where most of the concentrated amounts of heavy metals, you can see the list on the slide there. This is the main reason that the state and FEMA are paying for the rapid removal of this stuff, is because we consider it a threat to public health and safety. Cal EPA as well as the federal EPA. Again, I talked earlier about dust control. It's very important for the safety of the public as well as the people working on the sites. And the burrito wrap, it's kind of interesting. In the trucks, in the next slide we'll talk about, or we'll show you, but we place plastic, a big sheet of plastic that goes inside the truck, but it's so big that it falls outside the truck. They fill up the truck and the plastic with the ash and debris. And then as it becomes filled up, before it leaves, they wrap it like a burrito, the sides of the plastic. And on top of that, we actually put a tarp, again, to try and ensure that we don't get any of this residual heavy metals, all over the community or to our workers. It's disposed of as waste. So this, you can see the type of trucks, and in the first picture there, you can see what I was talking about, the plastic over the sides. And as they fill it up, when it's complete, the filling up is completed, they wrap that over the top of it and then put a tarp over the top of that. You can see in the second slide, the excavator taking the debris and ash and putting it into the truck. After we're done getting all the debris and ash out of the site, we'll go into taking up the concrete. Now, it's a little harder if you have a solid slab foundation. It's a relatively simple matter keeping the ash and debris out of the soil. If you have a raised foundation, it's a little bit different because that ash and debris tends to get into the soil and it becomes more difficult. You have to be more careful in picking it up, or else you mix the ash and debris, the heavy metals, into the soil. The reason we show here, so they take the concrete and we recycle it if we, it's a separate load, and they take it to recycling facilities. If we can save some of the concrete driveways, we will do that. But a lot of times with those heavy trucks and the 60,000-pound excavators, they become damaged. But we normally try to keep as many driveways as we can, as long as they're not damaged. And as long as they don't have a lot of burn ash, debris, oil, all kinds of different things can get on top of those. If we deem that they're too heavily contaminated, we will take them up. But again, the object is to try and make them as ready for reconstruction as possible. So to the extent that we can, we'll save as many driveways as possible. In rare instances, concrete is left, but what that entails is core sampling of concrete. So if you have burnt retaining walls, if you have burnt foundations, and homeowners are sometimes insistent upon trying to save that and use them again in reconstruction, in general, the high temperatures destroy the efficacy of the concrete so that they have to be removed. But sometimes testing can be done to show that it didn't get hot enough, and sometimes it can be saved, but not often. After we've removed all the concrete, then we take, as I said earlier, impacted soils of 3 to 6 inches are removed from the ash footprint. Then we test those we test the ash footprint area that we've removed the soil from. If those tests indicate that we still have high concentrations or greater than background concentrations of the contaminants in the soil, then we will do a soil rescrape, which means that we take another 3 to 6 inches from the ash footprint area. And when I say that, normally we do aliquot sampling, which we'll talk about a little bit in the soil conformation sampling in the next slide. So depending on the size of the ash footprint, it determines how many aliquots. Each aliquot has 5 samples in it, are taken usually from 0 to 3 inches into the ground. And we have, professional geologists, geotechnical scientists that examine that soil. And if we see that it's contaminated, we'll rescrape it, but usually only in the contaminated areas. So some of these aliquots, some of the areas will have just a certain area that is impacted. So we'll only take 3 to 6 inches off of that area, as opposed to the entire ash footprint, depending on what the samples come back as. So again, what's determined by the size of the structure ash footprint. We send those samples to the lab, get the results, we compare them to what our cleanup goals are. If we exceed, we take another layer of soil off. If less, then the debris removal is considered complete. This is a little bit better explanation of what like say it's conducted by a licensed professional. Soil samples analyzed, collected, again, based on the ash footprint. Once we have confirmed that the soil samples have come back to meet the county's goals for cleanup. Then we implement erosion control. So it can be wattles, you can see some of that, and sometimes we'll, spray on some erosion control. So we do this, as I mentioned earlier, for community safety or environmental safety, to keep our environment safe, to keep the community safe. We are very concerned about our workforce safety. All of our workers that work in the state program are required to have, at all times when working in the exclusion zone, personal protective equipment or PPE. We have respiratory protection as described in the first bullet point, eye protection. So their clothing needs to be Tyvek or disposable clothing that they will. We have what they call a red zone and a yellow zone. The red zone is the contamination zone, and the yellow zone is where we don and doff, or our decontamination zone, where we don and doff those Tyvek disposable clothing. They are required to have heavy work gloves, wear hard hats, steel-toed boots, and because there's some big equipment that makes a lot of noise, they have to have hearing protection as well. When all of the work is performed, we have a final checklist, which then produces a final report that goes through all of the bullet points mentioned in this slide, the site testing, how we've contained the fugitive dust, how we've monitored for it, what hazardous wastes were taken off the site and where they went to, debris removal disposal receipts, what the landfills, where they've gone to, where the metals have gone to, where the, what our foundation testing has resulted in, the soil removal, the soil testing results, as we talked about earlier, the asbestos results, lab reports, well and septic documentation, the vicinity map, plan maps, drawings, and other items as required by the county. So my name is Bruce Berger. This is my contact information. Bob Healy is my supervisor. If you have think of any other questions after this webinar, feel free to contact us. And I guess I'm not sure what the next on the agenda is.
Thank you, Bruce. I guess what we'll do is go ahead, we'll leave your screen up for a little bit here so everybody can take down your information if they have any questions. And then I think we'll just open it up for questions. We've just had 2 questions that popped up, but I would like to ask other people if they have questions, and we'll walk through that. Otherwise, we can provide you the information for how to sign up for the private debris removal program. Those of you, those contractors, if you want to help your clients through that process, we have our site set up on the SoCo emergency site, and then the city of Santa Rosa also has their site set up. And it'll walk you through the process of the application. It has the work plan and all the other resources that you would need. What Bruce just described as, you know, the CalRecycle program and the steps that they go through, it's the same steps that you would go through for a private debris removal program as you would for the CalRecycle would use for their program. And then as far as the soil sampling, for the private program, we set up soil sampling to be done at the end and allow the contractor to have a certified geologist or engineer come in, do that soil sampling, and they would sample the particular site where the ash was, where the ash footprint is, and then they would turn around and also sample off-site and use that off-site sample as the background sample. But now that we have a public program also, we'll have soil sampling kind of across the board for the county. So you can use that as a background standard too. So as soil sampling, you'll be given kind of two choices and be able to walk through that process. So I'm looking at the questions. It seems like the questions are really around, Bruce, maybe you can help with this as far as the General B licensed contractor. Is that the level of contractor that you would use for this project, or is there a certain debris contractor that is required?
So the short answer to that is yes, and it's a General A. That's what we require for the contractors that we hire to do the work for the state program. I'm not sure what the county allows. And the second question, as far as the asbestos specialist, yes, an asbestos specialist is required to survey, take samples, even if the structure was built in the 80s or later, with the state program.
And that's also the same with the private program. So like I said, they follow each other. There's a question here. If my company is listed as the removal contractor, am I required to do actual removal, or is CalRecycle an option? I'm a B licensed contractor. I'm not quite understanding that. I think what I am hearing is, and maybe you can help clarify this. Basically, there's two different programs. A property owner can choose to either go through the public program, which CalRecycle would be hiring contractors to do that program, as Bruce explained. And then the other option is to do it as a private cleanup program, meaning a private contractor is hired by the property owner, and they would follow the same procedure. And that, I don't know if that is what you are asking there.
Sometimes that question is asked because they want to know if, as the contractor, can they use a subcontractor that does not have the licensing. So again, I'm not sure what the county requirements are, but with the state requirements, it is yes, that we have to have the subcontractor as well. And I don't know, it could be that they're asking, can they be part of being hired by the state program? And unfortunately, the time for signing up for that has gone past. So that unless they're already in the mix for receiving the information for bid contract requirements, then the answer to that would be no as well. And yes, everybody that works on these sites, that works inside, the next question is, does the Class A licensed contractor need to be hazmat certified? What it is the Cal OSHA has Whopper certification that they have to have, which is a week-long course. But I'm guessing that's what they mean by hazmat certified.
Yeah. So you're talking about the 40-hour HAZWOPER. Is that correct, Bruce?
Yes.
Okay. We have another question that just came up. The property owner has prepped an application to Sonoma County and listed his company as the private contractor. Actually, this is, sorry, David, this is your question to the earlier question and answering that. So thank you. It really, if so it is that you are looking to do the private cleanup. And so I think it sounds as though you've already done the application. You've probably turned in the work plan, and we can work through that process with you.
Christine, I'd like to also remind registrants and participants that they can raise their hands using the Zoom app if they'd like to ask a question by voice.
Yeah, Stuart, can we actually remove the share, the current screen, and go back to the full screen so we can have the city participate too in questions and answer? Because I know both the city and the county are doing the private debris removal program, and it's very similar, but I do want to make sure that all those nuances are shared. And we have Jesse Oswald here from the city of Santa Rosa, and he can answer questions for the city. And then also I have Tiffany Sater, who is the one who's reviewing the private applications, and she can help answer those questions too.
Christine, we do have a couple of hands raised if you'd like to call on participants.
Sure. Does that go in chat? I'm sorry. I can't.
I can read them. So David Lawson has a question. I'm going to allow your mic. If you want to unmute, there you go.
So can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so the question is, I would prefer not to do the removal and debris cleanup because that's not our expertise as a company. We're builders, not demolition, debris removal, and that adds an entire level of liability to our program with our insurance company, which is something I'd prefer to avoid. That goes into the tens of thousands of dollars. So I'm trying to shortchange the owner's application by saying, okay, if he's listed me as his contractor, am I required to do this? Or can I say, yeah, I'm a contractor, I'm involved, but I'm not the contractor doing this. Can you use the public option?
So, you know, the property owner has the choice of doing the public option or the private option. If they're hiring you, basically it sounds like two different things. They can hire you to be the contractor to do the rebuild, but they can also hire you to be the contractor to do their debris removal. And that would be if they're choosing not to do the public option that CalRecycle spoke of. So that's really a choice for the property owner to make in which program they want to go into. But as the contractor doing the rebuild, that would be the next step after. So phase one was the household hazardous waste collection. phase 2 is either the private or the public option to remove the debris. And then phase 3 is the rebuild. And it sounds to me like you're going to be doing phase 3. And then the property owner would need to make a decision on the phase 2 debris removal piece.
Great, yes. We're currently still rebuilding houses from the Tubbs fire. So we're stretched to the limit doing that currently. I'd prefer to finish the jobs we're on before we take on an aspect of the rebuilding process that is not in our toolbox.
Thank you, David. Now I have a question from Austin.
Yes, thank you. My question is for the county and or the city. We're gonna, within the next few days, have debris removal applications ready to submit. And my question would be, at what point can phase 2 begin? Is that as soon as the DTSC has completed their phase 1, or do we have to wait until the entire fire has been released for phase 2?
For the county, we have it set up so as soon as you have completed the phase 1, your application, pending everything being appropriate in the application, your application can be removed and you can go ahead and start on the private program. I know the properties on the city have all completed phase 1. So I'm going to ask Jesse to fill in there and see if there is any difference or anything that would prohibit a phase 2 debris removal application from being approved in the city until the entire project is done.
So yes, for the city, there are, I believe we have 9 properties that haven't finished phase 1, but even though they haven't finished, we can accept the applications. We just won't issue them for phase 2 until clarification or verification that phase 1 is complete. So we can accept those applications and we will review them and hold them until phase 1 is complete. So we can take the applications at any time.
Okay, thank you, Austin. Now, Naomi. Naomi, if you'd like to unmute yourself, you can ask your question. Not hearing anything from Naomi, so we do have...
So,
okay.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Yes, I joined a little bit later. I was teaching class here. But anyway, could we go back over phase 1 and phase 2 just to clarify, since I missed the first part, and I'm sorry if I'm...
Sure. So Naomi, phase 1 is the household hazardous waste sweep, and that's done by DTSC, Department of Toxic Substance Control, and they are looking for like propane tanks, things that are an immediate hazard, and they will remove those. All properties go through phase 1. It's a mandatory phase. And it is done by the state. It's a statewide program. And then when you get to phase 2, which is the debris removal, so removing the ash and remaining debris from the property, that you have a choice then to go through a public program. And that cleanup program is done through CalRecycle and their contractors. And then there's also the private debris removal program, which would be hiring your own private contractor to come in and do the program pretty much identical to the program that CalRecycle would do.
Thank you.
Christine, there's another question. Is there a training to show the owner how to wrap the burrito and douse the waste to be removed in a Class A truck? And so if you want to answer that, I can.
I'm going to actually let Bruce technically talk about how to wrap a burrito.
I don't know how to wrap a burrito, but I do know how to do a burrito wrap on a load of hazardous waste. But no, there isn't really any, to my knowledge, any training videos. Certainly CalRecycle does not have any training videos, nor do we have training videos on how to wet the hazardous waste down, I'm afraid. But like I say, basically they just take a big sheet of plastic and run it out either side, across the top of the truck bed, and it extends out on the side for 6 or 7 feet on either side. And then as they load the truck up with the ash and debris, when they're finished loading, they just flip the sides over on top. And then also afterwards, they put a tarp, and bungee cord the tarp down. But that would be the short explanation.
I think we should also reiterate too that it should be a certified professional with the asbestos licensing that does it, not the owner of the property. So it's not something that a homeowner can do. It needs to be a certified professional.
Correct.
Christine, I see a little benefit, and maybe Tiffany can share the process that we go through with the applications. So we talked about phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. It would be good for just a short overview of, we get a work plan, we look at the work plan, we approve the work plan, and sort of that process might be beneficial as part of this discussion.
Yeah, Tiffany, could you share that information? I think it would be really helpful. And then can you also share some of the places where we've seen concerns? So, like missing signature lines, or just the simple pieces that sometimes get left, and what is required through the process. If you could pick that up, Tiffany, that would be awesome.
Yeah, so we require the debris removal application, a site map, a work plan, and Appendix A is now required for these fires now that we have got COVID and it's part of the health order. So I'd say Appendix A is often forgotten. And then the site map is the other big one. With the site map, we need to see the 3 background samples that are required, as well as we want to see square footage of each of the buildings that burned, and the number of soil samples that are going to be required per that square footage for each building. Also erosion control measures and the staging area, but that would be the most common place where we wouldn't accept an application and we're waiting for more information. Is there any questions about that?
So Tiffany, that's the application, but can we walk through the rest of what to expect as we go through the process?
So after we have everything we need for the application, we will we email the approved application to the contractor and the property owner. Sometimes the consultant, if we have that information as well, so everybody knows that the application was approved. This application acts as the permit. And so when you go to haul the material, you need to contact whichever landfill you're going to be hauling to prior to hauling, and they're going to need to see that application and a copy of the asbestos sampling results. And you're going to need to set up an account with them beforehand. And then after the debris is removed, and then you'll have the soil sampling consultant come in and do the soil samples, the confirmation soil samples and the background samples. They're going to generate a report that's going to come back to us along with the asbestos report, all the disposal receipts, and the completion certificate. And that completion certificate is a 3-page document. It's on our website. It's valuable to look through it now when you're first starting the process, so you can kind of fill it in as you go instead of trying to find all the dates of disposal and where everything went later. And once we get all this document back, we review them, a geologist reviews them, and then if none of the soil samples exceed background samples by more than 20%, and all the documents are complete, we can go ahead and approve the clearance of the property and issue a property clearance notification.
So I think a couple things Tiffany touched on there. One is if you have started into the debris removal process and you've received approval and now you're starting to do your debris removal, before you take it to the landfill, you need to make sure that you have documentation. The landfill will not take your debris without our approval. And so that will be really important. You don't want to get to the landfill and have it turned around. And then I think the other thing that Tiffany mentioned too was, please make sure that you follow the process that you've set up in your work plan and that you do have your certified asbestos professional check and make sure there is no asbestos on the site and have that certification. You don't want to endanger your employees by being out there if there is asbestos, and you want to make sure that it's being properly handled and disposed of throughout the process.
And then correct me if I'm wrong, they're required to have this clearance prior to getting building permits or starting building. So that could we clarify that part of the? Yeah.
So if you've made the choice to go through the private process, Tiffany spoke about the final certification and clearance. At the end of that, you will be receiving basically a document that says your property is now cleared and ready for rebuild. At that point, we have a map that's going to be put up on the website, and it will be shared also with the building departments. And so they will be able to look at that map and see if that property has been cleared or not. If the property has not been cleared, they will not be issuing building permits. And so it's really important to make sure you go all the way through that process and get that final clearance before starting into that next phase and having things rebuilt.
Okay, we have another question, actually 2 questions. Is there any certification that truck drivers or trucking companies need other than being permitted through Sonoma County? And I'll clarify that the permits need to be through Sonoma County Environmental Health Local Enforcement Agency. But are there any other certifications that they need, Christine?
From our standpoint, they need this certification from us. I think if you are looking at hauling hazardous waste, if you're going to be hauling asbestos and that, you need to follow the requirements for that. So there might be additional trucking requirements for depending on what debris it is that you're hauling, but that's also why you have your hazardous materials specialists on site And that's also why you have your asbestos specialists on site, and they will know the process. They also know what landfills everything needs to go to and make sure it's properly disposed of.
So Austin is asking another question. What will the special circumstances associated with a property that is over 5,000 square feet? I think that we need a little more clarity on that, Austin. So if you want to raise your hand, we can just have you speak.
My apologies, I'm not very good with the typing, but my question was regarding properties where the building footprint or the ash footprint would be greater than 5,000 square feet. It mentions in the work plan templates to consult the county. And I've seen a couple of projects that are going to be well over the 5,000 square foot mark. So I was just trying to kind of get a precursor of what might be entailed with that.
Is the property in the city or the county that you're speaking of?
They would be in the county.
Okay. I'm going to let Tiffany speak to that. It's in relation to the soil sampling and the mapping of the soil sampling. I'll let her.
So it's one additional sample point for every 3,000 square feet. So if it's 7,000 square feet, it's going to be one extra. If it's 9,000 square feet, it'll be 2.
Awesome,
and
thank you.
On up, yeah.
David Lawson has another question.
No, I don't.
Oh, okay.
Am I coming through now?
Yes, you are.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So the property that we've been connected with is over 400 acres. And it's in the timber production zone. There were outbuildings and various pieces of equipment, a lot of hazardous stuff on site. But the actual building footprint is probably less than 300 square feet because it was undeveloped property. So I'm kind of questioning, do we need, with 400 acres, do we need 800, 900, 1,000 samples?
Tiffany, could you respond to that, please?
We would only require samples of the ash debris. So let's say there was like a little structure or some items were stored that burned, and then you look at that, the square footage of that pile, and you would calculate the soil samples with that pile. So it wouldn't be over the whole 400 acres. It would just be for the individual areas that had ash debris.
Okay, well, I'm concerned because ash debris, this is a timber production area that was burned through twice in the Wallbridge fire, in which case there is ash everywhere.
Are you able to identify like where equipment and structures are? Because if it's just wood, then the soil samples wouldn't be required there. But
okay. I think I understand.
Okay.
Thank you.
Clarification would be structures, where there were structures.
Are there any other questions? Well, if there are no other questions, I'll just let you know that a copy of this will be posted. I don't have an exact location yet, but we have videoed this so that you can take a look at it at a later time. Please feel free to, if you have any questions and you're in the county, to contact Tiffany on the process. And then Jesse, just for clarification, you are the contact for the city. Could you just clarify that for me?
That is correct. I am the contact for the city. Primary emails, if people want, can go to rebuild@srcity.org. That's one of the best contacts.
Right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today, and thank you for working with our community to help us all recover.
I just want to add to, with the county, if you have any questions, you can call us. We have a hotline number. It's 565-6700. And we also have an email that we monitor. It's ehdebrisemoval@sonoma-county.org. So you can use either one of those sites, and that will get you to Tiffany and to other environmental health specialists that can answer your questions. We also have virtual appointments available if you want to do a one-on-one virtual appointment. And we have some in-person appointments at the 625 5th Street offices. So I just want to say thank you to everybody, and we appreciate you attending this meeting. And please, any questions, let us know, and we're all here to help everybody through the process. So thank you all.
I do have one final question, Christine, to reiterate the additional, for structures larger than 5,000 square feet, what were the additional requirements?
Oh,
every 3,000 square feet over the 5,000, it's one additional sample point.
Okay, thank you. And with that, I will end the meeting. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.